Welcome to Tailoring Talk with your host, Roberto Rivilla. I am a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Rivilla London suit, shirt, and shoemakers. It's the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something unexpected. We'll meet self-starters and creators to learn about their journeys and the lessons they've learned along the way. Please support the show by subscribing, and it helps so much if you take a few seconds to rate and review if your listening app allows. My guest today fell in love with photography at an early age. With a fine art background and classical training, she has this insane ability to pull emotion out of every image. Wedding photography is an area that's perfect for her. As a soulful, sensitive human being, she is naturally drawn to the beautiful, fleeting moments that fill a wedding day. Named a top wedding photographer in Martha Stewart Weddings, she's also been featured in a host of renowned wedding publications, and she's here today to share her story and insights. Tailoring Talkers, let's welcome Gayle Brooker to the Tailoring Talk Show. Gayle, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me today.
So everyone listening, Gayle's just a tiny bit nervous because this is her first ever podcast and she was a bit apprehensive, but I think she trusts me enough to know that I'm going to take care of her for the next half an hour or so.
Thank you.
Gayle, it's so good to meet you in person. Now, you and we got connected because I dressed someone for a wedding last year.
Mm-hmm.
A very, very special couple, but Rivers Patterson, my client, I did his tux, and also his best man, Frank Schwann Jr., who is getting married. Oh my God, I think in a few weeks' time. He was also at that wedding, and I dressed him for that too. You did
Rivers looked amazing. I mean, the suit was impeccable. So I really could not rave enough about your work. It was really, really beautiful on him.
Oh my God.
I mean, he's also a good looking guy who can wear clothes very well.
Yeah, no, exactly. But you know, that really came out in you were very kind to send me a link to the photos that you took that day, the edited versions, and I was just blown away by your skill with the camera, by your eye, the way that you frame, the way that you just see things. And you know, people who dabble in any kind of photography, you know, the one thing that people will say to each other is, you know, I can't make the camera show what I'm seeing with my own eyes. But you do that, the way that you tell a story. I just get goosebumps whenever I look at anything that you've done, whether it's your wedding photography, whether it's the portrait photography that you do, whether it's the children photography or the travel photography. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything that you seem to point a camera at just evokes so much emotion, and it puts the person looking at your photographs, it puts them right there. It takes them back. It's like time traveling back to that day and being able to physically go into that event, even though you were never there. And I think as a skill, it's just incredible. So,
thank you so much.
That's okay. Before I get you too emotional, so take me back to when you were younger, and what was it that first made you fall in love with photography? What inspired you at such a young age? And then kind of just take the listeners kind of through that journey to where you are today.
Sure. So one of my best friends growing up was very tall. She is 6 feet tall, and she loved to model. And her father was just a really great amateur photographer. So, I mean, she had a beautiful family. So physically they looked gorgeous in photographs. But what I loved about them is that her father was taking all these candid family photos throughout their life, and they were always in black and white. And there was just something that really resonated with me about those family photos. And I think I'm the youngest of three. And so growing up, I had very little photographs. I think I have maybe 5 photographs from my childhood. And I don't know, there was something about that I felt missing about my childhood in a photographic way. And, my father was in the Army and he took photography classes. He lived in Germany and so he would dabble in photography. And so I have all these great photographs of my oldest brother in Germany and just like beautiful black and white photos. And so I think I sort of longed for that family photo that I really never had, just because I guess my family was very busy by the time they got to me. So that just always sort of lingered in my head, that sort of love of a family photo and the connections that you could see. And then, my mom is an artist and she loved paint. And I had uncles and aunts that also were really into amateur photography. So it was always around us, but just never really aimed at our family as far as like a family photo.
Yeah.
Anyway, so years go by and I go to school and I didn't start taking photography until my senior year at college. They actually didn't have a photography program until my senior year. And so as soon as I took my first photography class, I really knew that there was something there that I really loved. I didn't know how I was going to make money or what I was going to do with it, but I knew that was the area of art that I wanted to focus on. And I was an art major. I took all sorts of drawing classes, painting classes, sculpture, but photography just really resonated with me. And so then I had sort of a long journey on trying to figure out where and how I was going to make money with photography. But I knew that's what my field was. And I loved connecting with people. I liked that was always my thing. I always loved photographing people. And so I kind of moved. I lived in New York City for a while. I went to grad school at Rhode Island School of Design and trying to figure out what my path was within photography. And it really wasn't until 2007, or no, sorry, it was like 2009, I guess it was. I met this woman who came to Charleston looking for a second photographer. And she was photographing a wedding. And I was teaching at the College of Charleston, and she asked me for a student to help her. And I said, well, I'm kind of interested in weddings. There's a lot of beautiful details, florals, people. It's kind of it's an emotional day. I was just curious about it. So I said that I would photograph with her. And from that very first wedding, I knew that was my path. I mean, I loved everything about it. It was also a wedding like I had never seen before. There was a wedding planner in Charleston who was creating these very branded, I guess you would say now, weddings. And it was very new at the time. It wasn't your traditional wedding. I mean, everything was related to each other. I mean, I think it was Gerber daisies. I can't remember what the flower was, but if it were Gerber daisies on the invitation, it was Gerber daisies in the arrangements. It was on the like lighting. It was very all incorporated and just really over the top. And I just loved that, seeing the beauty. And it was outside at a beautiful venue in Charleston. So it was just like one of those perfect days for a wedding. And it really resonated with me. And so I kept going. I just didn't look back. I just started asking people if they wanted me to photograph their wedding, and I would photograph friends and family members. And then, word just starts spreading and you start connecting, making your connections with wedding planners locally. And then, and I would go to some wedding conferences to try to network and meet other people outside of my area. And it just really took off. And, I started in a time when there were a lot of wedding magazines. Now there's none. There's not that many out there anymore. So it was a great way to get published and start getting name recognition. And, and I think for me, my goal has always been to try to capture the joy and the natural look of a wedding day. I never was into like, I really don't like staging photographs. I always say I'm not a director. I'm very much an observer, and I really want to ride the flow of your wedding day, and, and just be as natural and as candid with an elevation of beauty in there as well. So it's not full on documentary style where there's maybe some grime to it, but it's just, I'm looking at the way the light is, the way that what's in the background. I'm taking so many different things into consideration when I'm photographing them to make it look natural and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, I can see you getting emotional as you're describing that, because you're a very visual person, as am I. And it's really funny because people ask me what it's like on my side of the wedding fence, as it were, where I'm dressing people for weddings. And it's kind of, it's kind of a tricky one, because from a business point of view, a lot of our wedding clients we're probably never going to see again, because often they're not at the income level to be able to afford bespoke tailoring for their day-to-day stuff, but they want to make that investment for their big special day. And but then our wedding business has grown exponentially year on year, because every time you serve a couple and you dress a groom, inevitably someone at that wedding gets engaged, and they want to use whoever it was that dressed their friend. So what I do, I guess, mostly sticks in people's minds in some way. But then what's really special for me, and the reason why I love doing them, is because of the whole process and kind of steering them through. And then the other thing with guys is that most of them don't have a clue. When they come to me, they're like, "Oh, have you got any ideas? Have your fiance given you a steer?" And they're like, I really don't know. I'm at the drawing board. And it's basically just taking them gently and guiding them through that process, and then seeing the finished result. And then once they get to the actual wedding day itself, 2 months later, when the photographs come back and I get to see, what actually happened, there's so much fulfillment in that, I think. The job satisfaction is just, you just can't describe it. You can't put a price on the feeling that you get and the joy that you help create for that couple as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, I think it is, whether I usually always hear back from them after the wedding, after they get the photos, and they're very excited. And, but even if I didn't hear back from them, it was just me being there and knowing that I'm documenting this moment for them and trying to capture it in a really memorable way where they can experience this wedding again over and over throughout the years. And I truly do think about it in that way. I think, how are they experiencing this wedding? What does the food look like? What do the flowers smell like? How can I show them the atmosphere and trigger that memory 20 years down the road from now? And the way that I photograph, I think, is also very classical. It's a traditional type of way of photography, meaning that I'm not looking to do weird angles or do funny jumps or things like that. I'm really just trying to have that experience captured. And even with the way that I color correct, I try to really remember the way the colors looked. So they're not too saturated, not too blown out, that they really have that true to life feeling. And that's really important to me. And it takes a lot of extra effort on my end to make sure those colors match, to make sure that I'm reading the room correctly. And there's a lot kind of going on in those days and thereafter, like in the post-production.
Yeah. It's it's really interesting you talk about that kind of classical style of photography. Um, and this is where, when on the very rare occasion I get to catch a couple at the engagement stage before they start going through the wedding planning process. Very often, because statistically speaking, grooms leave everything to the last minute. So by the time I come in, I'm like the last thing. It's like, I'm like, so how's wedding planning going? And I'll be like, oh, everything is done. It's just my suit is the only thing. And so, she kicked my butt to get it sorted. And they've already got the photographer kind of sorted as well. And then I don't want to talk to them about that, because you don't want them to make them feel at the last minute they've made a bad decision. But talking from personal experience, I think it's important when you're selecting a wedding photographer, and perhaps you'll help me expand on this a little bit. Talking from personal experience, first of all, some people, you hear them, they're like, I've got a friend who's a photographer. They're going to do my wedding. Okay. So what type of photography do they normally do? They do like headshots and corporate photography and stuff. Okay, well, you might want to think about getting someone else to do your wedding. Because if you want to come across as a big business corporate conference, fine, go ahead. But if you want to look back on those photos and you want to jump back in time and relive your day, that might not be the right photographer to do that, because that's not what they spend their day job capturing. There are different there are different types of photographers with different skills and different ways of looking at things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even within the wedding industry, there's so many of us that are very different styles. It's funny, within the United States, I always think of like, there's the Pacific Northwest style, and then you have like the Southern California style, and then you have the East Coast style. And there's lots of different styles out there. And for me, I always love getting on the phone with my client, a potential client, because I think you can really learn a lot about them and what they're looking for, and just to really have an open conversation about their wedding and how I work. Because you're spending a lot of time with them on a very important day in their life. And so you want to be able to make sure that your personalities click and that you feel like you can have a nice working relationship with them. And so to be able to talk to them in person is, I think, very crucial for me. Yeah. And now I don't always get that luxury. Sometimes, they're very busy. They're working with a high-end wedding planner. It's just kind of, you're just kind of have to go with the flow and figure it out on the day of. But the majority of the time, I really like to get on a call with somebody. But yeah, I mean, everyone works very differently. If someone is looking for someone that's going to be more of a director, that's more outgoing, that's going to be a little bit more in their face all day, then that is not me. I definitely am very low key, and I really try to stay calm. I mean, I've been shooting weddings for many years, and I think the more calm and sort of neutral I can be, especially in the beginning when there's a lot of emotions that are happening in the beginning. People are nervous, they're excited, they're getting dressed. And so a lot of things can go wrong at that stage. And so the best that I can do is just to really be able to read the room, make sure that everyone is comfortable with me photographing them at that moment. And if not, then I know to pull away and just back out, just let them have their moment and then kind of regroup once the situation is cleared. And then also just to be very, very calm and help guide them through their day. I mean, there have been many weddings where I've had to sort of take a role as a planner in some situations to help lead them into the next step of the wedding day. And that's fine. And I am happy to do that and put my camera down. I mean, it's ultimately the goal for me is to get beautiful photographs that has great memories. And if that means putting my camera down for a moment and helping them, then I will do so.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just the right thing to do. I was at one wedding once where there was some delay in the kitchen with the cake. and they were about to cut it, and the bride didn't want it cut in the kitchen. There was an instruction that went wrong, and so nobody was moving because it, I don't know if the perception was like, are you not allowed in the kitchen or something? So I was like, right, okay, hold my beer, like literally hold my beer, rolled my sleeves up. I just kicked the door in and went in, and I said, do not cut that. And then, because she wants it done out here in front of everybody. I remember it was a while ago. I can't remember the exact details, but I jumped in on that one. There was another wedding I was at where all the ushers, the groomsmen, got completely drunk. So they were on the floor, and there was nobody to support the groom. Like, all their roles just went out the window. There was no one to do the specific jobs that those guys were meant to be doing. So again, I just basically went to the groom, right, what was he supposed to be doing? What was he supposed to be doing? And then I was basically like, like a hurricane, just, completely
running
did not
around.
I did not enjoy that wedding as a guest. But it's just what you do,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen so many different things that have gone wrong that have been wonderful. I mean, you see it all when you've been doing it for, 15 plus years. You see a lot of different things. So yes, I think it's just the more agreeable and helpful you can be, the better ultimately my photographs will become, because I'm just really trying to get everyone to, have fun. Really, it's just all about finding that joy and that warmth, and really connecting with your family and your friends, and and I am just there to capture that for them. That is truly not about me at all. I bring no ego to that day. It is about me just really rolling with their joy.
Yeah. What would your if anyone was coming to you and was asking you for advice on, let's just pretend you don't do photography anymore. Sorry, that's a really horrible thought. What would your advice be to any couple that says, listen, Gayle, I'm looking to select a photographer? Maybe it's someone who wants to work with you, but you can't work with them because, that just wrong part of the country or wrong part of the planet. What would be your kind of top tips for them in choosing someone to photograph their big day?
Sure. That's a great question. Well, one, I would definitely get on the phone with them and have a conversation and just learn about who the photographer is, what their style is like, how they approach certain aspects of the day. I would also want to take a look at maybe 2 or 3 full galleries. And I still get people asking me that often, to look at a full gallery, because Instagram is wonderful and websites are great, and you can really get a good vision of what their style is. But to really see from beginning to end how they deal with the whole day is, I think, really important to look at. And then I would, if they know anybody who has worked with them, any sort of trusted friend or vendor who's worked with that photographer, that they could give them a reference. If they're really looking at like a cold call, that sort of thing, I would certainly try to find some sort of reference for their work. And professionalism. I mean, I think that is very key, to have good manners, good professionalism on a wedding day. I think those go a long way for sure. But yeah, I would say those would be my top tips for them.
Yeah. Moving away from weddings slightly to some of the other types of photography that you do, you mentioned that you're not a director, and one area that I know that I need to start looking for a photographer very soon, because I need to get some headshots done. We need to get probably some new lifestyle photography and all that kind of stuff. The portrait photography you do, how do you it's obvious from those pictures that your subjects are at such ease with you. How do you get the best out of them, or put them at ease, or I don't know, like how do you achieve this? I've just got your site open now, and I'm just looking at, I mean, every single one of them is just 24 karat gold.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
but like, for example, this dude here with the mustache, right, and the cigarette in his hand, and the
Yes.
three button jacket. I mean, he's so cool. Like that just
Yes.
pops off the screen. I'm like, you know, some people think that I'm a cool guy, but I'm just gonna say to them, listen, I'm nothing compared to the. How do you do that? Because it's so awkward. I mean, it's the same with weddings at work as well. So when you were talking about reading the room and you know,
Mhm.
because when you point a camera at people,
Yeah.
they get very uncomfortable. Most people get very uncomfortable. It's very rare that you point a camera at someone. You do get the odd person that turns around and it's like, oh, a camera lens is pointing at me. And then they're suddenly, yeah, exactly, right, straight into pose. But most people, 99% of people are like, oh, no, you know, don't take my picture. Or are very awkward, you know? It's like
Listen,
suddenly they forget how to smile. They do horror movie smile, like,
or blue steel. It's always like the same.
oh,
No, I know that I would say that is one of the number one things people say to me is that I hate getting my picture taken. I'm like, well, guess what? I do too, but we're going to do this together and we're going to have fun with it. And, you know, I think for me, it's just, I get people moving. I always feel like people who are walking and they're talking, they're kind of, I ask them questions about themselves. I say goofy things to make people laugh. You know, I think the thing is to really have movement. And I think that just makes people feel at ease when their bodies are doing something different than just standing there awkwardly staring at the camera.
yeah.
You know, and I always have a smile on my face. I'm always being silly in front of the camera, not like over the top clownish, but I'm just, you know, if I need to say something that makes them laugh, then I'll do so. Or, but I think the biggest thing is really just to make them feel at ease and just kind of talk them through it and you know, and tell them that they look great and it's beautiful and the light is so pretty and look at this beautiful background and what a wonderful day that you're experiencing. And so I really just try to go through the movements of what's happening. And I'm very much a present day person.
Yeah.
You can ask anyone. I don't live in the past. I'm not very good with the future. I'm very much a present day person. So I think for me, it's just like I can really revel in that joy of the present day and find ways to make them feel at ease.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
that process of making them feel at ease is a form of direction in a way, right?
Yeah, well, yes, you are
Because
right.
yeah, I mean, from personal experience, I don't know how to use Zoom very well. But I was gonna I just wanted to show you something, and it's a photo of me from 10 years ago, believe it or not. I'm getting so old. Um, but it's like one of our hero shots for our business. It's one of the most recognizable. I mean, not that I'm famous or anything, but certainly amongst our customer
Oh,
group
yeah.
and our community. And you know, that photo shoot, it was a fall water photo shoot in the middle of August, which over here generally is about 35 degrees.
Okay.
So I was already a grump. Like I was really not happy.
Sweating.
You know, it's like sweating away. I feel the heat, and 35 is just ridiculous for me. And then I'm having to put on all these heavy like tweed jackets and stuff. And then
Yeah.
we had a photographer who basically was really not giving me any direction at all. And so I didn't know how I was supposed to be posing or whatever. And that's one of the best shots of the day. But do you know, I don't know if I look happy in that photo to you or not, but that photo, I was actually swearing at the guy. This was towards the end of the shoot, and I just had enough. And I was in that moment, I am telling him, would you just tell me? Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just
Yeah.
either tell me what to do or that's it. Just
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and
No, you
just
don't look
in
very happy in that photo. I'm not gonna lie. The
and
lighting is
just in that
hard. Yeah.
just in that moment, I think we actually managed to get a decent shot of me buttoning up the jacket.
The jacket looks good.
But it was like the worst thing. And but that's where, I think direction as in stand like this and move your leg forward and so on is just not what anybody needs to hear when they're being photographed. But
No.
being put at ease and having fun and moving around is
Yeah.
definitely really, really important. And that, the results of that, obviously going to make sure that I've got your website link in the show notes, but people,
Okay.
need to go check this out and also follow you on Instagram as well.
Okay.
We'll be able to see the results of a photographer that works with you in that way, that does put you at ease and tries to get you acting as naturally as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not very good when it comes, it's interesting when I think about, I've done fashion shoots before and weddings, obviously, and I feel so at ease shooting weddings way more than I do a commercial shoot. And I think it's because in my mind, I'm having to direct a lot more on a fashion shoot. I'm
mm,
wanting to tell the model how to look this way and move this way. And for me, it's just I get so nervous, maybe because I just don't do it that often. But on a wedding day, it's just a natural ease for me to tell them what to do if I need to tell them what to do. And maybe it's because they're real people. They're not, I mean, models are real people too, but you know what I mean? Models know how to move. They have certain
yeah.
they've learned how to move their bodies. They know, well, it looks good. And so maybe there's not a spontaneity to
Hmm.
shooting fashion that I don't like as much as, just, I guess personally, it's just something about weddings that I love, that there is a level of emotion and a level of, um, you know, I don't know what the word is, but it's just, there's a connection there that is deeper than I'm just out to take a pretty picture. I'm out
Yeah.
there to really record their history. And I love that connection in that relationship so much more than I would just a fashion shoot.
I think there's more to it. I mean, not to be disparaging to fashion photographers, but fashion shoots are, they are contrived at the end of the day, and you're trying to get a specific end result, and the goal is to sell whatever it is that you're
Right.
photographing. Whereas with what you're doing, you're capturing, you're documenting, you're a historian.
Mhm.
You just happen to be doing it with your camera. You're taking a slice of life as it's happening so that the people it's happening to can go back to those moments at any point in time in the future,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's a year on from the wedding, whether they're celebrating their 20th anniversary, whether they're sitting down with their children or their grandchildren,
Yeah.
or, you get to that stage of life where sadly, one of you is going to go before the other one. And then you just have those moments where you want to be taken back in time to remember the highlights of your life and so on. And that's what you're doing. And there's something more profound and meaningful in that type of work. And again, it's not to push all my fashion photographer friends to the side
No,
and say what you
it's
do
just
is,
different. It's
yeah,
just
it's just
different.
different. But
It's just different.
there's that depth. It just goes beyond the superficial.
Yes, I agree. I mean, one of my favorite things that I used to do when I was in grad school was I would go into antique stores and I would dive into all their old photographs. And there was something that was so sad and lovely at the same time about discovering these family photos that had been disregarded. And I remember walking the streets in New York and finding massive amounts. Someone was throwing out their garbage, their trash, and they were on the streets, and there were all these family photo albums. And so I took them. I took them. I still have them. But it was just something about that lost family photo that I just couldn't let go. I just didn't want it to be thrown away in the trash. There's just something really beautiful, whether it's, that family is no longer alive or whatever it is. I just felt like it needed to be honored or saved in some way. So there's a very sympathetic love of old family photos.
Yeah. In the digital age, Something that scares me immensely is that, so much of our photography is digital, if not all nowadays, actually. Funny enough, my last podcast guest, Alex, we were recording just before you came on, and he had an old Polaroid camera on his shelf in the background. And we were just talking about our love because we were talking about his book. And I said to him, I said, I'm gonna both get your book electronically. I'm gonna buy it in hardcover as well. And he said to me, which do you prefer? And so I used the music analogy that, back when we were kids, you'd buy your vinyl or your cassettes or CDs, depending on how old you are. And the release date of of a new album of your favorite band or your favorite artist was something that you had marked in your diary, and there was that anticipation, and eventually the day arrived and you go to the record store and you kind of leaf through everything, and then you pick it up and you go home and you unwrap the cellophane and open the jewel case and put the CD into the thing and take, what I mean. And with vinyl, there's that anticipation and slowing down of time where you take the record out carefully and you place it on the turntable, and then the needle, and you get that little bit of crackle at the beginning, and then the music starts, and whilst it's playing, you're sitting there with the album sleeve reading all the notes and stuff. But music has now gone the way of subscription services and streaming, and it's very much, you go into iTunes or Apple Music or Spotify or whatever, and it's like, oh, the Foo Fighters have a new album. I didn't even know that was happening. I'll listen to it. I'm done with it. I'll listen to the next thing. And it's the same with books. I've got thousands of books on my Kindle. I forget to read most of them, which is why I prefer physical. And then, this leads into the conversation with you and photographs. I prefer looking at photographs in my hand than I do actually just flick on a phone, because then everything that's stored digitally gets taken for granted. And also the other thing that scares me is that when we die, that someone's just going to delete our iCloud accounts or Google accounts or whatever, and then it all just goes.
I know. It's so true. It's very true.
Are you getting demand for, couples asking to have their photographs presented to them both digitally and also printed and bound? Or
yes, so I do make custom albums for clients, and I make them fairly often. And I do try to push them because it is a beautiful way to have a record and something that you can pull from your shelves that has, maybe 100 or 200 images from your wedding day. So what I like to do, I give every one of my clients about 150 4x6 prints. So it's not the entire wedding. It's basically your highlights from your wedding weekend. And that way you have something tangible. I love books. I like the hard copy. I don't read them on my phone. I don't like to read them on the computer. I don't watch a lot of TV in that way. So I very much like a tangible photograph. And so I think it's just my little gift to the clients. It's a box. It has, like I said, like about 150 photographs. And it also has, their USB drive that has everything on it that they can look at. But there's something nice to be able to, on your bedside table, flip through images. I'm like you. I love to touch them. I like a tangible thing. And I do worry about, even with I'm not the best organizer of my own personal family photos. Shockingly, it's sort of, but I do like to every year make some prints, and whether or not they end up in the drawer or, they end up in frames, I do like to have multiple prints kind of running through our house. And I also love a Polaroid. I took my daughter out the other day and we just took a Polaroid camera, and she was with her best friend, and we just documented the day with our little Fuji Polaroid camera. And there's just something really beautiful about that singular image. I don't know. I just love it.
Yeah. Wow. Gayle, thank you so much. Anyone that's listening that wants to connect to you, obviously they can get you via the website, gaylebrooker.com.
Mhm.
You're also on Instagram
Yes.
at
It's Gayle Brooker. So my Instagram handle is just at Gayle Brooker.
okay, nice and easy.
Yes.
I should have said this. I should have asked you at the start. Where are you based?
I'm based in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
So we're right down in the historic district downtown, and we've been there for many years. And our house is over 100 years old, and so I think I definitely fall in love with the classical architecture and the beach, and so it's a nice, small, beautiful town if you've never been.
Yeah, no, I caught the accent. I thought it was Carolina.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was north or south, but yeah. So for all my US listeners, obviously Gayle is accessible, and for those of you that aren't in the United States and aren't married yet, maybe think about booking your wedding and having it in Carolina instead.
Or I travel. I shoot weddings all over. I was just in Mexico last month.
Yeah.
So I shoot them in California, New England, all over. I was in Oaxaca City last month, and I'll be in Arizona this year, Florida, all over.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
I love traveling. It's a great way for me to see the country and to experience new places. And so travel has always been in my soul, and I love that so much. So I like to travel anywhere.
Yeah, brilliant. Gayle, thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your insights and your tips as well. It's just been just a wonderful time with you. It's everything I knew it was going to be, and also emotional as well. There were points where I was going to start crying for good reasons. For good reasons. Have you had fun?
I have. Thank you so much. I really have enjoyed getting to know you as well. And, I will be in England in June.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Give me your dates. Where are you going to be staying? Don't give me your dates now. They don't need to know.
No. It's okay. We'll be there we'll be there for about 10 days in June. In London, we'll be there for 2 days.
Okay.
But my family is from England. So my father is first generation American. So my grandfather was English.
Right.
And so we're kind of doing an ancestral tour of England with my 80-year-old parents.
Oh,
should be interesting. But we're going to go up to Scarborough, is where I have a lot of family from, and I have some other family that's currently living in Salisbury. So we're going to meet some of them and kind of tour around Yorkshire area, and then end up in London.
Oh, fantastic. So, well, when you come to London, if your itinerary allows even just 30 minutes to fit little old me in for a coffee or whatever, then yeah.
Okay.
Get in touch and let me know. I don't think we're going anywhere in June. So yeah, I should be around. Well, I'll be in the thick of it. I'll be in the thick of it with last minute weddings, basically.
I'll come give you some moral support.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. Gayle, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for joining Gayle and I on this episode. Don't forget, we are on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast, and you can email me as usual at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send this episode on to someone you know who might get some help or be inspired by what Gayle and I discussed today. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and want to support the show, you can buy me a coffee at the usual place. Have a great week. Be good to each other, and I'll see you on the next one.